Today we will be looking at what learning is and how it occurs. We will be doing this through the lens of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Learning is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, practice, study, or by being taught. This definition implies that learning occurs when there is a change in behavior from not knowing to knowing. This change of behavior is the result of experience and continuing practice, and when it is learnt, it will last for some time. There are three categories of learning. 1. Cognitive learning. This refers to learning that is primarily concerned with mental or intellectual processes. For example, problem solving, learning rules, concept learning, and recalling information. 2. Psychomotor learning. This refers to learning concerned with the development of bodily movements. For example, gross motor skills, fine motor skills. 3. Affective learning. This refers to learning that is concerned with personal and social matters. This involves the development of attitudes, beliefs, values, and interests. There is a significant amount of overlap between these categories. When you learn to do something, you use several of these categories of learning to help learn the skill.
Possibly in the last 120 years have seen the biggest increase in knowledge about how learning occurs. Here is a basic overview. In 1889, Paulo's theory of classical conditioning was released, recognizing that dogs could be conditioned to respond to an unconditioned stimulus, for example, salivating at the sound of a bell. Skinner's theory of behaviorism became popular in 1913, teachers adopting the approach that children are a clean slate and behavior is shaped through positive and negative reinforcement. In 1961, Maslow's hierarchy of needs impacted the way learning was delivered, emphasizing a need for primary needs such as food and water, safety, belonging, and a sense of self-esteem before self-actualization could be achieved. Bruner's theory of discovering learning suggested that children should be able to interact with their environment, drawing on their past knowledge to solve new problems and learning new information in the process. 1 year later, in 1967, Piaget's theory of cognitive learning suggested that there were 4 key stages to learning: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. In 1983, Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, or ways of understanding the world, was developed, suggesting that there are 10 key ways that individuals learn. In 1994, Vygotsky suggested that social interaction is fundamental to cognitive development and suggested the concept of a zone of proximal development through which an individual moves from what they didn't know to what they now know, a process he referred to as learning. In 1994, the theory of constructivism was also formed, suggesting that people actively construct their own subject representations of an objective reality by linking new information to what was already known, much like hanging clothes on a clothes hanger.
Now let's focus on Howard Gardner's theory of learning. Howard Gardner once said, "An intelligence is the ability to solve problems or to create products that are valued with one or more cultural settings." There are 10 of these multiple intelligences Howard Gardner has come up with. We equally have each of them, but we are not equally intelligent in them. These intelligences are both what learning is and how it occurs. Howard Gardner believes learning is verbal linguistic intelligence. Learning occurs here by sounds, rhythms, words, and thus communication skills being improved. Learning is mathematical logical intelligence. Learning occurs here by mathematical concepts and patterns of the numerical and logical nature being understood. Learning is musical intelligence. Learning occurs here by rhythmic understanding through musical production and enjoyment. Learning is visual spatial intelligence. Learning occurs here by seeing an abstract and or understanding an idea inspired by a picture or pictures. Learning is bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Learning occurs here by using skills involving steadfast bodily movements and object grasping. Learning is interpersonal intelligence. Learning occurs by others' moods, behaviors, and desires being understood by the learner. Learning is intrapersonal intelligence. Learning occurs here by discovering your values, beliefs, feelings, and therefore yourself. Learning is naturalist intelligence. Learning occurs here by gaining knowledge of natural plants and animals. Learning is existential intelligence. Learning occurs here by getting the concept of human existence and questioning it thoroughly. Learning is spiritual intelligence. Learning occurs here by practicing and studying religion and theology. Learning can also occur through teachers asking students questions. Questioning causes learning to occur because students are engaged as they get the information they have just learnt and rehearse it back to the teacher. Teachers following Bloom's taxonomy when questioning their students allows students to learn because students are considering so many aspects when answering these different questions based on Bloom's taxonomy. Also, there is a cognitive complexity to questions. EdTech Vision created these exact two tables showing Bloom's taxonomy and Bloom's... Oh, we don't need that bit, so don't worry about that. Students should answer questions where they only need thinking that is lower order for the first questions, then eventually answer questions using more and more thinking that is higher order thinking. Knowledge questions, comprehension questions, analyzing questions, synthesizing questions, and evaluating questions is the lower to higher thinking order questions should be in.
How do we know learning has occurred? There are a number of ways that we can tell if a student has understood the learning concepts. The main ways in which this can be identified is through informal and formal assessment methods. Informal methods may cover some of the same aspects that appear in formal assessment. Questioning can be used to check understanding of the subject matter and to pick up on any areas of weakness in students. This can also be done for teachers to work out what their students already know about a topic. Another technique is by having a student demonstrate a concept. This is generally done with practical concepts such as playing an instrument. Observation and monitoring is a big guide to tell if students are grasping the concepts. While your students are working, move around the room to see what the students are up to. Questions may be asked here, and it gives the teacher a good understanding of what is happening and what is needed at the very moment when help may be beneficial. Formal assessment is a lot more obvious to the learner that they are being assessed. It can come in a variety of forms. Tests such as multiple choice and diagnostic tests are often used to measure the learning of our pupils. A writing task could be used for assessment purposes, such as a story or a recount. Other forms are practical and oral tests and public and national examinations. These assessment strategies can be adapted to cover one or some of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Finally, we'll be looking at Ellen G. White's perspective of learning through discipline. Discipline needs to be seen in a clear manner by the children and should be only used for making the child better versions of themselves. Ellen G. White says of the teacher, "The teachers in our schools have a heavy responsibility to bear. They must be in words and character what they wish their students to become, men and women that fear God and work righteousness. If they are acquainted with the way themselves, they can train the youth to walk in it. They will not only educate them in the sciences, but will train them to have moral independence to work for Jesus and to take up burdens in his cause." Ellen White also speaks of the power the Christian educator has either at school or at home. No limit can be set to our influence. One thoughtless act may prove the ruin of many souls. The course of every worker in our college is making impressions upon the minds of the young, and these are borne away to be reproduced in others. It should be the teacher's aim to prepare every youth under his care to be a blessing to the world. This object should never be lost sight of. Further, Ellen White also states, "True education does not ignore the value of scientific knowledge or literary acquirements, but above information it values power, above power, goodness, above intellectual acquirements, character."
Learning is an experience and a process by which we acquire knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes.